The company CEO has reportedly said this was a sort of once-in-a-lifetime size loss and that they'll diminish from here. Do you buy it?
Uber is again in a major loss. They have always had difficulty turning a profit despite the assumption that it will eventually become successful. Nevertheless, Uber lost more money as it expanded. Will the manipulative ride-sharing company with predatory fees finally go down for good? Uber was, is, and always presents itself as an elaborate scam. There are inherent limits to the profits possible from running a taxi fleet, even if you can misqualify your employees as contractors and steal their salary while forcing them to incur the cost of purchasing and maintaining your taxis. The magic of early Uber, when taxi rides were incredibly inexpensive, cars were always accessible, and drivers earned large livings behind the wheel, was not magic at all. It was simply exploitative pricing. They reached a significant milestone in 2023, making more than it spent in a whole year for the first time. It was largely interpreted as a sign that the perennially cash-strapped company was now on a more sustainable track. Today, there are hints that the journey may take longer than we anticipated. The ride-hailing and delivery startup announced a surprising net loss of $654 million in the first quarter of the year, as legal settlements and equity investments weighed more heavily on Uber's business than they expected. It is no secret that Uber defines its drivers as independent contractors to decrease labor expenses and present itself as simple software that connects users to ambitious freelancers who work for numerous ride-hailing and delivery companies. Nonetheless, the corporation has long opposed efforts by local legislators and courts to categorize its drivers as employees and pay them more. The corporation has spent tens of billions of dollars opposing these attempts, and while it occasionally prevails, it appears to be no closer to resolving the issue. Uber lost up to $10 billion annually from 2019, 2020, and 2022. Uber began turning into some profitable quarters in 2023, but their $654 million loss was greater than analysts had anticipated. This loss highlights the vulnerability of Uber as a company, even though it was caused by underperforming investments and court settlements. Given their narrow margins, it seems clear that all it takes for Uber to become spectacularly unprofitable is a single market slump or a few court settlements. Uber's gross margins are barely 40%, compared to 40% net margins for the majority of its tech competitors. Uber's net margin, meanwhile, is pitiful at 2 to 4%. Therefore, Uber can return to a loss with just a small variation in ridership, cost per mile, surge pricing, or incentives. After its 2010 San Francisco launch, Uber swiftly rose to become one of the most valuable digital assets in the world and a well-known brand. As a result of its success, many business owners are beginning to think differently. Uber was initially created using a disruptive business model. Over the last decade, Uber has encountered numerous internal and external challenges. These include charges of sexual harassment, a string of firings related to a workplace culture probe, and alleged sharing of a rape victim's medical information, and unflattering recordings and emails from Kalanick, the former CEO and co-founder. There were political and regulatory pressures, union conflicts, a legal struggle with Alphabet, significant losses, and investor infighting. Ride-hailing companies have struggled with supply and demand since COVID-19 forced drivers off the road. Uber had to rely on incentives to entice drivers back, which ate into its profits. That appeared to be stabilizing in recent months, but the war in Ukraine has resulted in considerable increases in fuel prices. Analysts predicted that corporations would have to spend millions of dollars just to keep drivers. The company earned its first quarterly profit in late 2021, but then suffered a significant loss due to investments in the first quarter of this year. During Khosrow Shawi's tenure, the business made significant investments in its grocery, beverage, and convenience delivery segments through acquisitions such as alcohol delivery provider Drizzly and Postmates. following failed attempts to acquire food delivery service Grubhub. When you consider that Uber altered business owners' perspectives and how we operate in less than 10 years, you realize how radical the changes really are, especially considering that nobody seemed to notice them at the time. Uber disrupted a well-established business by providing a product that no one knew they needed. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? These days, many people claim they couldn't survive without Uber, which is, in part, the reason it has changed businesses so dramatically. What did Uber do? Sure, Uber is less expensive than traditional taxis, but millions of customers aren't drawn to the service for that reason. Uber's approach to the market and business strategy gave them the biggest edge when trying to upend a well-established industry. Uber simplified a system that it didn't think needed or could be changed. Their ability to comprehend what modern consumers expected from a market that some could argue took them for granted was a source of strength. The previous model had an odd bias that favored the supplier above the demand. Let's imagine catching a taxi before using Uber. Depending on your city, you may have called a known local car company, hailed a cab, or asked the bartender to call one for you if you had a few drinks. The provider now has the upper hand, since in the event that the taxi company estimated a 40-minute wait, you either wasted 20 minutes looking for a faster pickup or waited the full 40 minutes. And then, if you had been drinking hard, it's not usually a nice chat. You better pray to heaven that you had enough cash on you or that your driver was patient enough to stop at an ATM. Uber improved passenger safety by providing driver identities and car models, streamlining the ordering process, eliminating uncertainty about when a cab would come, implementing a cashless system, and guaranteeing that a single app would function in several cities and countries. Many owners have found that disruptors are more beneficial than threats, as they find smart ways to increase the bottom line by conveniently using gig contractors to reduce overheads or to cope with flux. Businesses are now considering how they can disrupt their own markets and simplify their propositions to their customers. Rather than going out of business, they become their industry's Uber. That shift in thinking will pay dividends as customers search for better consumer experiences. Uber stands to be forgotten with improved, more efficient counterparts that will replace the ride-sharers, attracting their customers just like most competitive businesses. What do you think? Is Uber a modern necessity? Let us know in the comments. If you liked the video, give it a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Until next time.